Hello and welcome to another video about geology and media. Today we're going to be talking about Destiny 2 and more specifically the newest playable region of Europa, which funny enough I'd actually just talked about Europa in my video on barotrauma, so if you haven't seen that one yet, please do. That game focuses more on the underwater exploration aspect of the moon, so there isn't going to be too much overlap on what's actually being discussed today. So if you're interested in getting the full picture about Europa and what's actually below the ice, I recommend watching that too. Also, I think it would be interesting to cover how two different developers portray the setting of Europa, so that's why I'm going to be doing this back-to-back video on seemingly the same topic. Anyway, back to Destiny 2. The newest expansion of Beyond Light added a lot of places to explore on the kind of icy wasteland of Europa, but is it realistic? Well, if you stop to actually look around and take in the atmosphere, you may have wondered if the real-life version looks anything like that. Of course, you'd have to subtract the giant black pyramids, alien cities, and research facilities. There's a few things that really stick out in the game for me, and before I begin, I just want to say that I'm not trying to hate on the game by any means. It's still an enjoyable experience, and it was fun to explore, but I still want to talk about some things without focusing too much on the space magic or gameplay. So, as some players have talked about, and as was shown in the trailers leading up to the release of the expansion, there's now a weather system on Europa. And from what I can remember, I think it's the first time Bungie has done that in recent memory, though I could be wrong. I'm not quite sure. In reality, none of that blizzard or snowstorm stuff that we actually see in the game is possible. You see, Europa is kind of similar to our own moon, Earth's moon, in multiple ways, not just in size, but also in weather, and that is to say that it's non-existent. With little in the ways of gravity, there's not really much of an atmosphere, and without the atmosphere, there's no weather system. There's no sky, there's no wind on Europa, so if you are actually on the surface of Europa, you can pretty much see space as is quite clearly from the surface, and I think you can do that in the game too, so that is quite realistic. There's also an issue of radiation, which is apparently so deadly that without an atmosphere, a person would die in 24 hours of straight exposure. The point is, if you played Shadowkeep and you were on the moon, the environment on Europa, if accurate, should have been similar to that, but with ice instead. Clearly, no two moons are the same, so there's going to be differences in terms of landscape, especially depending on what region of Europa we're going to be exploring. Specifically, I do believe that the regions of exploration in Destiny 2's version of Europa are likely to be bordering what we would call a chaos terrain. And this would have been where the cracked, thick ice full of ridges and folds meets a highly disrupted area of broken blocks of ice. To further explain, please check out this video from NASA's website. And I'll leave a link to the full NASA article and video below if you're interested in learning more about Europa's chaotic terrains.
In the 1990s and early 2000s, NASA's Galileo probe swooped low over Europa's icy landscape. Close-up pictures revealed a geologically young surface and unusual formations in the ice. Grooved ridges and crustal plates looked like they had broken apart and rafted into new positions floating on subsurface water or slush. Similar ice patterns are found in the Earth's own Arctic. A group led by Brittany Schmidt, a postdoctoral fellow at the University of Texas Institute for Geophysics, focused on Europa's chaos terrain, circular, bumpy features on Europa's surface that had long intrigued researchers. It turns out that similar terrains are found on Earth, on ice shelves, and under glaciers overlaying volcanoes. Based on what is known of Earth, Schmidt's team developed a 4-step model to explain how Europa's chaos features form. I read the paper and immediately thought, yes, that's it. That makes sense. According to the analysis, one of the chaos terrains apparently overlies a body of liquid the area of the North American Great Lakes. Moreover, the authors believe that ice shelves on top of the lake are collapsing, providing a way to transfer nutrients and energy between the surface and Europa's vast underground ocean.
Another question or area of concern that some may have, since I was making comparison to our own moon, is that where are all the craters? If this is another part that differs greatly from Earth's moon, then it should be relatively smooth. But what does that really mean? And although there are some impact craters like Pwyll, which is Pywll, it has a relatively young surface, if we take into consideration the bombardment frequency of Europa and what we see, bombardment frequency meaning, how much times, they're getting impacted by different meteorites and asteroids and whatnot, the estimate of Europa's age comes out to be around 20 to 180 million years old on the surface, which is a lot younger than our own moon's Maria, which comes out to be about 3 billion years old. So that's quite the difference. Still, if there's so much activity on the surface, scarring and ridges in comparisons to our own Arctic regions, what is really powering it? It doesn't have the sun like the Earth does, or convection in the traditional sense that is on Earth, although there is the case that scientists are making that there is ductile ice below the surface, but I won't get into that. And the point is, heating is happening, but why? If you watched the barotrauma video, you would know the answer, which is that it's due to tidal forces, the gravitational influence of Jupiter and other moons pulling and tugging on the poor moon Europa. And this is what drives the internal heating of Europa and deforms the surface as such. There's also one more thing that's lacking, but since research is so new, I doubt it would have been implemented anyway. And this feature would have been kind of interesting, though, maybe added some more diversity to the icy plains in the game. That is to say, in 2018, a paper published by Daniel Hobley and others in the Nature Geoscience journal suggests 15 meter deep or 50 feet high blades of spiky ice dotting the surface of Europa known as penitentes. These form through a process known as sublimation, where the ice is turned straight into gas, and is possible to form under the conditions present in the current equatorial belt of Europa. Though there are no images of the phenomena actually occurring at the surface due to limitations in technology, the paper asserts that there is evidence to support the interpretation with radar and thermal data. Besides that, I don't think there's much else to really talk about. Of course, we barely just scratched the surface, pun intended. There's plenty going on just below the ice. It would have been cool if the developers decided to showcase some of that, but I guess that would have been too ambitious given that there's already so much going on in the game. But hey, maybe there's a whole army of pyramids in the water below. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you guys have any suggestions or questions, something that I missed, which is likely, please feel free to leave a comment below, and I'll see you guys later.